Okay, what I'm going to do is explain to you how I've marked out this wall in preparation for wallpapering. I plan on placing 6 drops of wallpaper across this wall to form a panel. So I don't want the wallpaper to go right the way up to the ceiling, and I don't want it to start dead on the left or right hand corner. It's going to be set in, and there'll be a painted border all the way around, and obviously the skirting board at the bottom. So it's creating a panel of decorative paper to create going across that room. And I found the centre line and I've marked that, so that's 3 drops of paper in. I've placed a mark on the wall, and now I'm using a spirit level and straight edge. I've used a slightly longer straight edge because the spirit level is not so big, and just to extend its usability and make it a bit easier. Nice sharp pencil, and you need a nice crisp sharp line onto your wall as a starting point for your first drop of paper. Now the wall is plastered, and I've also put 2 coats of primer onto the wall. This is to reduce the suction that the gyprock would have on the paste, wallpapering paste. When I've wallpapered onto MDF panels, I've done a similar thing. I've used PVA as a bonding agent, and then you can use what's called size, which again will slow down the absorption of the paste when you apply it. Okay, so I've got a nice straight line from ceiling to floor, and I'm going to check that line now with what's called a plumb bob. It's just a weight on the end of a piece of string, and what I do is I place the string over the edge of a piece of wood that's square cut on the end, and this allows the string to come off the wall. We can still use the edge of the wood to push it against the pencil line that we've created, but now I've got the string is off the wall, therefore the weight is not touching the wall or the skirting board. And what we just want to do is just to make sure, let it stop its movement, and then have someone sight it and check that the string is dead in line with the pencil line that you've drawn. It's really important. This is the first datum point that we're going to use. Okay, marking the drops. So I take my roll of wallpaper, which is 52 centimetres in width, and I make a mark to the left and right of that centre line that we've drawn to create a designated spot for each drop of wallpaper. Then I'm going to use a spirit level and straight edge and create a perpendicular line from floor to ceiling. So I've created 6 sections onto my wall. Okay, measuring the drops. So now I need to know how long, the length of the wallpaper. So I'm measuring from where I want the wallpaper to start to where I want the wallpaper to stop. That would be 1 full drop, and I'm going to add about 50 to 100 millimetres, so I've got plenty of allowance. Okay, so mark onto your wallpaper where you would like the drop to start. You don't generally start on a half pat. Okay, cutting the drop. So cut the first drop, lay your wallpaper fully out, extend it completely out, and then take a measurement from where you want the wallpaper to start and to the length of the drop that you've already calculated, and just cut those with a knife. Make sure you've allowed a little bit of extra allowance. Okay, now to cut the second drop. So we have to line up the paper pattern this time. So I'm going to lay the second drop in front of the first drop, making special care to line up the pattern. And then I'll transfer the cut sizes from the first drop. So we'll end up with both drops being exactly the same, but you will have a small amount of cut off at the top in order to get that pattern to realign. And just cut it off with a knife and a straight edge onto a piece of cardboard or cork tile to protect the floor that you're working on. And you have to repeat this process now until you've got all 6 drops. Okay, time to organise your space. So fold up the wallpaper with the good face facing each other so it's protected, and put it somewhere in the room that's out of way and not like to be stood on. Okay, mix your paste. This is ready mixed paste that I'm using today, but I have used the self mixed type, powdered type before, and it works perfectly well. Just mix it up by hand, make sure there's no lumps. You want a nice smooth mixture. You can stick a little paddle in a drill and give it a whisk, which I'm doing here, just to make sure it's nice and smooth and a good consistency. Okay, time to apply your paste. So what you're going to do here is apply paste for 1 drop only. So just one of those panels that you've marked out with the pencil. You need to obviously go a little bit over the lines. You want it slightly wider than the drop itself. And apply, I'm applying with a brush, but I have applied in the past with a roller. It works just the same. It's a bit of a hot day, so I've decided to use a brush, therefore hopefully get a little bit more on than I would with a roller. But you want a nice even spread, no lumps or anything like that, or any debris on the thing. The paper will shine through and accentuate anything left or marks on the wall, etc. So make sure it's liberally coated and slightly wider than the drop itself, from the top to the bottom, and that's it. Okay, time to position the first drop. So I've got myself a step ladder in preparation. Fold the paper in on itself so the good side is facing each other and it's in half, and obviously be aware of which side is the top, and you want to position it. You work from the top down obviously, so fold them in like so. Now I know I'm holding it so the top is uppermost. Take it up ladder, be careful not to fall, and then you're just positioning it with the start point. So I've got a little bit of an allowance on the top, although you can't see on this video, and I want it to actually start where I want it to start on the line, and I'm dropping it down, and this is where I will line it up with that first centre line, plumb bobbed line we drew onto the wall. And it has to be, that's your datum, it has to be dead onto that. If you don't get it onto that and you're slightly off it, again each drop of paper will be slightly off as well, and it could affect the pattern running out. So it's really critical to get it dead onto that line. Now I'm pushing out any air bubbles between the paper and the wall that's quite common. I'm using a spatula here, and then I'll use a sort of like a window squidgy, which is a slightly wider thing and works just the same, but I have used brushes in the past and they've worked perfectly well. You can get a proper wallpaperer's brush, or you can just use a normal, as wide a brush as you can get hold of. But the squidgy works really well, I have to say. And just go through just even strokes, making sure that it's all still dead level with that first initial pencil line. Okay, time to trim the bottom and top of the wallpaper. So what I've done is I've pushed the wallpaper into the corner, into the intersection where the skirting board is, and I've used a straight edge to push that right down, and then I'll trim along the edge of the straight edge. Now that'll leave a small amount of wallpaper sitting onto the top edge of your skirting board. So then I will do a secondary cut to just remove that last strip of paper. But by cutting off the bigger section first, the bulk of it, what it allows the paper to do is push itself right in and not force its way off the wall. Okay, here I'm using a short pile roller just to roll my paper smooth and flat all the way over, just really taking out any nicks or anything like that that might be still in there, and just pressing the paper onto the glue and then onto the wall just finally. Then I also will be checking for any elements of glue left there, any traces of paste. You want to get that off that paper as quickly as possible, so you can just wipe it with a sponge. And just overall just checking and make sure I'm 100% happy. I've got a cloth to dry it with, just so there's no extra water just laying on the paper. It's not really what needed. And then again, use the roller just to push more, really pushing the paper onto the wall and making sure it's nice and smooth. And I'll be repeating similar processes like this all the way through as I add extra drops onto the wall. And you can work right the way across. It's also important to make sure that there's no glue that's seeped out the edge and has formed a build-up. Okay, time to paste the second section now. So just as you've done before, but obviously this time you're pasting up against the first drop of paper. So make sure you don't get any paste onto that paper if possible. If you do, obviously just wipe it off with some clean water and a sponge. And just take it all the way down the edge of the paper, and obviously on the pencil line side, just slightly over that pencil line, just to make sure that there is enough paste underneath the paper when you put the second drop on. Just to always check in there's no lumps in the paste and there's no high build areas of paste. You want a nice even layer right the way across the drop, and that should prevent any lumps forming through the paper. Okay, time to position the second drop. So it's much the same as the first, but this time you've obviously got the edge of the first drop to line up against, so you're actually pushing the paper up against that edge on the first drop, and obviously also paying special attention to make sure that that pattern lines up perfectly. So work your way down, pushing the paper into the edge, make sure it's nice, crisp join, and then again with the spatula pushing out any air bubbles and working from the top down. What I have noticed in the past is sometimes the pattern doesn't line up perfectly well, and what that can be is the first drop has obviously got moisture on it from the wallpaper paste, and it's expanded the paper slightly. It's just a small amount. If that happens, what you can do is just peel the paper, the second drop back, and line it up more towards the middle of the paper, so the pattern matches in the middle, and if there's any indiscrepancies, it's out further towards the top and obviously to the bottom. And what you will find is that as that paper absorbs more moisture from the paste, it will slightly expand as well, and it tends to all even out in the end. So just wipe out the glue and the air bubbles as to the previous one, and you can obviously work across both drops now, so you've got a bigger area to work on, paying special attention that you don't get any paste onto your tools or any paste coming through the join. Just clean that out and dry it off with a cloth. That's it. Okay, and that's it. The only other things that I can think of to mention is you just carry on now with the subsequent drops of paper, lining up each time, and obviously you can use the roller and flatten it out and work on the whole panel rather than just on the one drop. Good luck.